Welcome back. Happening now in Maryland, a hearing is underway for Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the once mistakenly deported man who is now being held in a Tennessee prison on human smuggling charges. His attorneys want him brought back to Maryland while the case plays out. But the Justice Department wants a civil lawsuit over his return to the U.S. dropped, and a familiar scene outside the courtroom this morning as supporters they rallied to demand Abrego Garcia's release.
They thought that as the days, weeks, months went by, we would forget about Kilmar. They thought that once they launched an aggressive smear campaign against him, we would turn our backs on him and his family.
Now let's bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, thank you for joining us today. Can you walk us through what's at stake during today's hearing?
Good morning, Mugo. This could really turn out to be a consequential and pivotal hearing for the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that man from El Salvador who was deported to that country by mistake and only brought back to the U.S. to face serious charges related to allegations of human and migrant smuggling. And Mugo, the judge in Maryland overseeing this case, that is the civil lawsuit that was first filed back in March to try to bring back this man to the U.S., is overseeing one key request from his lawyers. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's attorneys are arguing that their client should be transferred to Maryland and kept there once he is released from federal criminal custody. And of course, we expected Abrego Garcia, Mugo, to be released from the custody of the U.S. Marshal Service back in June, pending the start of his criminal trial. But that, of course, was delayed out of concerns from his attorneys that he could have been immediately detained by ICE and then deported to a third country, even without the criminal case being adjudicated in federal court in Nashville. Now we are trying to understand what the judge will decide. The Trump administration, the Justice Department specifically, Mugo, is saying and arguing that this case is now moot because he is back in the U.S., because this man is back in the U.S. After all, the lawsuit started with that request that he be brought back to American soil. But the judge in this case, based on notes from our reporter in the room, Jake Rosen, seems very skeptical about this argument from the Justice Department and seems to be grilling the Justice Department, the government, about this allegation, this concern that when they were telling her, the judge, Mugo, that this man could not be brought back to the U.S., the Justice Department was preparing to indict him on these charges of alleged migrant smuggling. So again, this is the latest chapter in this legal battle, but it does seem to me that the judge is very skeptical about the government's arguments here, Mugo.
Yeah, so Abrego Garcia's lawyers, they have released details from his imprisonment in El Salvador, and they claim he was psychologically and physically tortured while he was being held in that prison there. So how is the country, El Salvador, how are they reacting to those claims?
Well, yes, just to level set, Mugo, the attorneys representing Abrego Garcia have alleged in federal court now several times that their client faced beatings and psychological torture at that Secot mega prison in El Salvador, and that he also was deprived of sleep and otherwise mistreated, and that in doing so, both the U.S. government and the government of El Salvador violated his rights, including his constitutional rights. But President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, has strongly denied this, including by posting a video on social media that appears to show Abrego Garcia playing soccer, getting medical checkups, and doing other ordinary things that seem to belie and be at odds with that allegation, Mugo, that he was mistreated. We should note, however, that that footage appears to be limited to the lower security facility where he was transferred after being detained at Secot. That is the infamous mega prison. We have not yet seen video of Abrego Garcia inside Secot yet, and that is really important to note.
Yes, absolutely. Some very, very important context to add there. So we understand the Trump administration is once again ending temporary protection programs for tens of thousands of migrants here in the United States. So what is the latest on that?
Yes, Mugo, this is a major policy announcement. The Department of Homeland Security has announced this morning that it will terminate 2 temporary protected status programs for tens of thousands of immigrants from Honduras and Nicaragua. This announcement means that these migrants from these countries in Central America will face deportation, will lose their work permits and legal status starting in early September unless they are able to have other legal means to remain in the country lawfully. These 2 Central American countries were approved for TPS back in the late 1990s. So many of these immigrants have been here for more than 2 decades in the U.S. And now, of course, they face the prospect of going back to their home countries unless there is some sort of intervention from a federal district court. Mugo.
Okay, Camilo Montoya-Galvez, once again, thank you so much for all your reporting. We appreciate it.